Everybody, welcome back to the Daddy Knows Best channel, helping you be a smart, educated, and happy man out there in this crazy world. Today we're going to be talking about, how, kind of, as y'all already know, gender's already messed up in multiple ways. Kids are being raised to not identify themselves, as their original gender, and they're openly told as young as 6 or 7, they're sometimes targeted by teachers in public school, telling them that they need to identify or even have a change, go under the knife or the blade for, transformational surgeries and paid by your tax dollars. But let's talk about, what, Miss Sarah Sony, I believe it is, has to say. She's an upcoming YouTuber. I love her straightforward presentations here, and she's definitely, a lovely lass, as they would say. And, they would probably insult her and say she's a pick-me. But anyways, without further ado, let's see what, this lady has to say as we hear about a story from Lia Thompson.
Hello, how are you all? I hope you're doing well and having a wonderful Thursday. I am not going to be live today, but I will be live again tomorrow at two different posts. Did a year of testosterone suppressant, which is within the guidelines of the NCAA, and was able to join the women's swim team as Lia. And on the women's swim team, a lot of people immediately raised concerns about the fairness factor. Lia has grown up a male, has gone through male puberty, even trained as a male on the swim team. Also, it's really interesting. The time that Lia was on the men's swim team, Lia actually was ranked, I believe, like 460 something. Now on the women's swim team, obviously Lia is ranked quite higher and is actually slashing women's records. So
if that doesn't make sense to you, let's break it down here real quick, and then we'll continue on with the rest of this video. There's a lot of things to say about this, but this Lia, who is originally a man, again, I want to be very transparent. I'm not hateful. People can transition. I think that people should be respected. But if we are going to seriously consider this, what is a man and a woman, we have to have some kind of standards. And as she says here, Miss Sarah, this person was originally a man, went through puberty, had high levels of testosterone, obviously didn't perform that well as a man, in these competitions. I believe this is a swimming competition. But, they only went through a year or two. It really was 2 years. She corrects herself. 2 years of, testosterone reduction treatments. So where you take estrogen and they have methods or methodologies to essentially change your body. But it's not complete. We don't have the type of technology, at least in here, currently in 2022, where you can completely change your physiology, where you can completely change your body. Another thing they're going to get to here in a second is that this person, you have to address them as Lia. They still have a third leg. They still have something in the trousers, and that's something we're certainly going to talk about. It's absolutely shocking that we don't have standards just like with feminism, just like with a lot of these quote-unquote leftist things, they're willing to break barriers and hurt people and make it so there's big consequences in order for them to feel comfortable. Why don't they have a separate competition, for these transitioning type people, these transgender type people? Why don't we, look at the science, as they say? Oh, they always say, trust the science, believe the science. Well, the science clearly indicates that this person is still mostly male and still has much higher levels of testosterone even after a couple years, or it's not going to change their bone structure. And it doesn't do enough to suppress or reduce their testosterone levels, and these things that we have measures of, as well as height and multiple things. In regards to swimming, the length of your arms and the size of your hands, all those things have a big impact. but they won't sit down and actually evaluate this because you're supposed to, you know, just obey, and we'll talk about, you know, that as well, because it gets much worse in this story. But let's continue. It's quite, this is quite, it should be shocking to you, you know, that our society is willing to hurt women. You know, supposedly she makes this point as well. Supposedly we have to believe all women and trust women, and if a woman even feels uncomfortable, you can figuratively and literally, essentially, throw a man under the bus. But here, in the name of transgenderism, you know, somebody who was a man and arguably still is a man is able to make a lot of people uncomfortable, and these women, they get threatened. Let's continue.
Much concern has been had over the fairness of this. I think you all know where I stand. I think it's always important to say that I support anyone, however they want to live their life or identify. Life is short. Make yourself happy. The question about this is fairness, and also the way that the school and the NCAA has handled this situation regarding the other girls on the swim team, in my opinion, is quite disturbing, and we'll get into that. But first, let's look at a clip of this interview with Lia on Good Morning America that aired, I believe, yesterday.
Jumped in the rankings between the men's and the women's team.
And there are some who look at the data and suggest that you're enjoying a competitive advantage. What do you say to that?
There's a lot of factors that go into a race and how well you do. And the biggest change for me is that I'm happy. And sophomore year, where I had my best times competing with the men, I was miserable. And so having that be lifted is incredibly relieving and allows me to put my all into training, into racing. Trans people don't transition for
The framing. Listen to how they framed the question, or how she framed the question. Your critics. No, these aren't critics. This is almost everybody saying this is not fair. And the fairness isn't a critique, it's actual science.
I hope that makes sense as well. It's the same things that happened with our political debates. They get to control the speech. They get to assert their personal beliefs or presumptions, or try to assert something as true. Just like with the video I created yesterday with the Jimmy Kimmel show, they went to little kids and asked them why the pay gap essentially existed. They didn't give them information. They didn't ask them if they believed the pay gap existed, if this thing even is real. They told them it was real, essentially, and told them what is their reaction to it. Or they didn't even ask them what they felt about it. They told them, how can we fix the problem? So they not only asserted their belief, which is false, they also asserted that they had a moral obligation, and that society and the world had a societal obligation to fix that problem. So here, you're considered a critic. You're considered a hate monger. You're a phobe. You're an ist. You're an ism if you even ask questions about the science or the biology. Again, I'm not a hate monger over here. At one point, we might be able to have the technology where somebody can completely change their physicology and their body and their bone structure, and to the DNA, to the individual cells. You know, again, people act like this is made up, but we had movies and TV shows and Batman Beyond I watched as a kid where, you know, this was presented as possible, and we're already going really fast to a world that looks like the Matrix, you know, plugged up to robots. Anyways, or in the internet. But the thing here is, these people don't want you to be able to think, and how it was phrased and what you're supposed to care about. Again, with these news, they don't present facts and information. These are highly structured and highly planned, and the message to you as somebody in the public, a citizen, a pleb, you're told that what the number one thing you should be thinking about and care about in regards to Lia Thomas is that she is happy, and that, you know, you should make quote unquote the assertion that transgender people, quote unquote, should be happy. This is the same assertion, of why we capitulate to, violent groups. In America, we didn't prosecute people who burned down towns and cities and destroyed businesses. We didn't prosecute people who did, theft. We, continue to allow people in certain cities to get away with crimes if they steal less than $1,000. Because we have to capitulate to the feelings. You see, they're arguing about the feelings. That's what this is all about. They don't care about science. These people who constantly tell you to listen to the science, they don't care about science. They never have. It's about their feelings and their agenda and what they think is best. Because again, they think they're smarter than you and better than you and should have the authority to tell you how to live and how to feel and if you even should live. That's what we're headed towards in a society. But again, these people don't care about the science. And again, I'm all for Lia Thompson, you respecting this person. But scientifically, we're going to be talking about that Lia Thomas isn't even a woman. We'll be talking about that here in a second. But again, I do, and I think we should have somewhat a base level of respect, for transgender people. That's not the issue. And the issue is we're trying to control them. The issue is that you're trying to control women. And we'll talk about that here in a second. What about the women's feelings? What about how the women feel? What do you think? What about what society feels and what society thinks? These types of people certainly do not care.
And we know that there is a physical disadvantage that these girls have being on the same team as Lia. And actually, just yesterday, and this originated in the New York Times, 2 medical doctors have gone on record confirming that trans swimmer Lia Thomas, who previously competed for 3 years as a man at the University of Pennsylvania, gained an unfair advantage when allowed to compete against biological females despite taking testosterone suppressants. There are social aspects to sport, but physiology and biology underpin it, said Dr. Michael Joyner, a physician at the Mayo Clinic. Testosterone suppressant is the 800-pound gorilla. As CBN News reported, NCAA rules require at least 1 year of testosterone suppression treatment in order to compete in women's events. Thomas, who came out as transgender in 2019, has undergone 2 years. Okay, I'm corrected. 2 years. 2 years of testosterone suppressant and began swimming on the women's UPenn team at the start of her senior year. But peer-reviewed studies have confirmed that even with this treatment, athletes with biologically male DNA and physiology still have an unfair advantage when competing against biological women. Lia Thomas is the manifestation of the scientific evidence. The reduction in testosterone did not remove her biological advantage. Harvard University lecturer, who is also the co-director of undergraduate studies in human evolutionary biology at the university, also told the newspaper that LGBT advocates mistakenly blend gender identity with biological sex. Activists conflate and gender in a way that is really confusing. There is a large performance gap between a healthy, normal population of males and females, and that is driven by testosterone. It goes on.
So let's break this down real quick. I'm sure that to many of you that made sense, but these testosterone suppressant treatments and these medical procedures and things that they do, did with Lia, don't do enough to reduce the testosterone. You might say, like, how do we measure that? Really, it's a basic standard. You get the average level of testosterone, which is a measure of physical strength and ability. You look at the average for women, and then you look at the average for men. And Lia should be brought down. Her testosterone should be reduced to that level of an average woman. But you see, they don't look at the different biological factors because again, these leftist or radical modernist type people live in a fantasy world where men and women are the same if they want them to be, and if at the other day they can act like men are destructive beasts and animals, and that we need to reduce their testosterone, and we need to make them more emotional. You need to be able to express your emotions. They can pick and choose whatever they want to say or believe on one day or the other day. And here we have a measure of testosterone assigned, trust the science, and these people will ignore the science. These testosterone reduction, or testosterone, transitional quote unquote therapy, or however they want to say it, does not do enough and did not do enough to, reduce that in Lia. And you might be surprised, why did the CPS and a couple of doctors talk about this on, a national news on their website, because if you don't know, this is one of the biggest issues going on right now. To some people, this is as big as the civil rights ever was. And to them is just as important. And it's a national thing because women are being affected. And, there's a big division, even amongst feminist types, about, how we address these types of issues. The simple fact with the science is that, we're going to talk about here in a second, that Lia, still has too much testosterone, and she has something in the pants still. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about it.
On to say that even years of testosterone suppressant would still put Lia at a biological advantage than the biological women. And I didn't play this clip of the Good Morning America interview, but this is what Lia said in a different part of the interview. I intend to keep swimming. It's been a goal of mine to swim at Olympic trials for a very long time, and I would love to see this through. There are many, many, many individuals who are trans who clearly see that this is incredibly unfair, and they say, I would never do that and I don't condone that. And this is not how the trans community feels as a whole, because anyone that comes out and says, hey, this is unfair, you are automatically labeled a phobic. When questioned about the critiques and when questioned about whether this is unfair or not, Lia completely diverts and says, now I am happy. When I was swimming with the male team, I wasn't happy. Now I am happy. Well, I can understand why you're a lot happier. Now you are breaking records, you're dominating. Your dreams of getting to the Olympic trials are a lot more likely, because as a male swimmer, Will was pretty average. That dream probably would not have happened.
And that's a very good point. Again, we're not trying to beat up on Lia over here. Again, I even have to keep capitulating for the YouTube gods. But, Lia was 400. She was number 400 in the competition as a man. Now she's number 1. And, essentially she's saying she would like to continue doing this. She doesn't want this to stop, and that she's very happy about her dreams, becoming a reality. She doesn't talk about the skill or the talent or the motivation that she has. And I don't even know what the pool, how many people originally started that competition. Are they 400 out of 500? Was Lia 400 out of 1,000, 400 out of 2,000? I don't know. But you don't overnight. You can't go from number 400 to number 1 without making dramatic steps in, talent and skill and technique. Nobody goes from that number. I mean, unless they just entered a competition and they're no name, they have no ranking and they just started out. But somebody who's been performing for a while, let's say, you compete in a sport for a year or two, and they know your track record, they know what your averages are, what you're most likely to do. Somebody who doesn't perform that great doesn't all of a sudden the next day, make magic happen like that without an explanation. And then they try to chalk it up to training. We'd like to know what kind of training Lia does. Does this person actually do that much training or better training than others? No, this isn't about the training or the skill or the effort or the motivation. This is a biological thing. This is about science. Let's continue.
The answer to the question on fairness was me, total disregard for any of the women or their feelings on that team. And also, this could be a whole nother video, but in my opinion, that right there is, in a nutshell, everything that is wrong with our society. It is me, 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 me. This is where I lose my crap. This whole thing is outrageous enough. But this, the gaslighting to the other girls on the swim team.
Okay, before we get into that, I wanted to talk about the me, me, me thing, is because this is the same problem that get with a lot of the feminism and all this. Again, they can freak out and tell you to quote unquote believe our science, worship at the feet of Fauci as a god and these types of people, but you're never allowed to really discuss the information. You're never allowed to criticize it, ask questions. They never have to clarify or explain themselves. You can get Mark Zuckerberg and these types of people, for example, who go in front of, you know, our courts, in our government, and they can lie and they don't have to explain themselves. They can say, you know, for example, oh, the algorithm is out of our hands. Like, we don't really know what goes into it. But it is an artificial intelligence. People don't understand actually what's going on. So there is some truth to that, but they controlled the parameters. They told it how to act. They told it what was important, key factors, you know, permissions, restrictions, you know, and told it its priorities. It's still, you know, has some level of autonomy, but it still has limitations and controls, and it's still able to, you know, it's not able to do, it's, you know, it can be programmed, it can be told to do one thing or the other. But they won't break down what inputs and what controls and what measures they have put in place. They will not explain those types of things. They cannot. It would expose them. And this is the same thing that's going on here. They don't want you to look at the science because the science and the facts, as usual, is completely against these modern, you know, extreme modernist type people. It's completely against them. They are completely wrong. And we're about to get to another point here, beyond the gaslighting at the end of this video, that I think is perhaps the most important. I've mentioned it before. I think it's the most important thing regarding this video.
So this came out in the Daily Wire. I believe this was an interview that Matt Walsh did. He has a movie coming out today, a documentary that's going to be on the Daily Wire. It's called What is a Woman? And he actually interviewed one of the members of the swim. And this is what she told him. And she came out anonymously because, well, you'll see why. The anonymous athlete explained that even basic concerns about the locker room were not brought up. If they were, she said, it was clear that you'd be smeared as a phobic. Notably, Thomas still has his penis and has not had surgery to remove it and dates females, according to teammates. If you even brought up concerns about it, you were called a phobic. If you bring up the fact that Lia's swimming might not be fair, you're immediately shut down and called a hateful person or a phobic. Walsh pressed. But there's never any conversation. The coach didn't sit down with everyone and acknowledge what everyone is upset about. She goes on to say, so...
Okay. Well, let's stop it there and we'll continue on. Imagine if you were in a girls' swimming competition and somebody comes in who not only, you know, tries to take control of the situation, somebody who's demanding, somebody who's, you know, me, but they also have a third leg. And again, I do think that we should address people and identify people the way they want to be identified. But biologically speaking, if, you know, with these types of competitions, you know, if we are going to have these types of sports that are just for women or just for men, you know, this person still has the third leg. They still got the sausage down there, as they say. This person biologically, you know, again, you can socially or culturally or however, I don't even know exactly how they word it. You can identify whatever you like. Lia, you know, can call herself a woman. But biologically speaking, when you have not actually gone under transgender surgery, You haven't transitioned. Even among the transgender community, why? I mean, I'm sure that there are a few, but why aren't these modernist and the transgender people against Lia? This person has not transitioned. They have not had the surgery. And that's another factor why their testosterone levels are so high. They still have that. You know, they still have that stuff going on down there. And not only is this a biological thing, it's also a cultural thing now, because now somebody who is a biological male is allowed into the locker room. So again, completely throw out the feelings of women or the expectations or the culture. Is this even legal? I mean, if a man goes into a woman's bathroom, as we already know, women can walk into men's bathroom. They don't care anymore. And you can call yourself whatever you like, and people can get away with it. But they will still criminalize a man if you go into a woman's bathroom. And there's still qualms about that, because sometimes these people can be very bad. Imagine your little daughter, and maybe you think that she would be safe in a bathroom. And there have been those kinds of things have happened before, where somebody who either lies or is a quote-unquote transitioned person, you know, targets your kid in the bathroom. But here, you're told to shut up. You're told not to ask questions, and it gets even a little bit worse. But again, these women are not allowed to make their own separate swimming team. We're not allowed to make, sports and organizations where they would call them as quote unquote super straight, you know, where we require you to prove yourself as, you know, to either identify or either be what you were born biologically. You see what I'm saying? Why is a person who is, again, still currently transitioning, even if this person had fully transitioned, you know, even if we did have the technology to completely change the DNA of a person down to the individual cell, to as far as we could possibly go, why are they still allowed to compete with women? You know, because there's still a difference. There's still a difference. But of course, they don't care about women here. These people don't care about women, and I argued with this with feminism as well. They've never cared about women, because these are the same people who attack, you know, traditional women. These are the same people who attack traditional families. These are the same people, you know, who attack feminine women with long hair, who dress, you know, pretty. You know, people who are gentle and kind, and if you have 3 kids, you're crazy. If you have more than 3 kids, and especially if you're not one of these quote-unquote minorities, you're also a major problem. And if you're a traditional white woman who married a traditional white man, you are really a problem. But let's continue. Let's continue on with this story.
Penn actually brought in people high up in the athletics department to talk to us, like brought in some people from LGBTQ Center. They brought in someone from psychological services, the swimmer stated. So if you're upset, you need some support of what's happening to you, so you need psychological help. The higher-ups told the swimmers that in uncertain terms, Lia's swimming is non-negotiable. They made it pretty clear if you speak up about it, your life will be over in some way. You'll be blasted all over the internet as phobic. You'll never get a job. So
okay, I want to highlight this again, because this is something I brought up on my channel and people need to be talking about. You know, so not only can you not say anything, you can't act like you're uncomfortable. I'm sure that this threat, if you just quit and you were silent, if these women just quit and was silent and walked away, they would still smear and attack this person. And you know, they would use their connections with this college to make sure that you never got a job anywhere. This is the same exact thing that I brought up. If you don't have the correct think, and these people, I mean, even outside of college. Let's say you did everything right in college and were very neutral or even leftist. If you had anything on Facebook, these people look over all of your social media. These HR departments, these corporations, these people who are led and controlled by the employees. Most of them are extreme modernist type people. It doesn't matter how good you are, how friendly you are, how much community service. This is the exact same thing that happened to me. As an Eagle Scout, I served my community. I built up my community. I was a standing pillar, a star, somebody who should have been seen as a star candidate in every possible way. My grades were good. I had excelled in multiple ways. But here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good of a student you are. It doesn't matter at college. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter what you've done to try to build up the college, provide community service, tutor for free. Yeah, and a lot of students are tutoring other students for free, and they're not paid for it. Essentially, doing a lot of these teachers' jobs for them. It doesn't matter if you did all those kinds of things. It doesn't matter if you broke records in other ways. It doesn't matter, and if you're a woman and all this stuff, and even if you're a feminist, none of this type of stuff even matters. They said they don't care. They literally brought in somebody who is an LGBT type professional to give them a speech or tell them what to believe, and gave them quote unquote training. Imagine that. Imagine that you weren't allowed to speak to your coach and discuss with your coach, somebody you trusted, somebody who represented you, and then that coach is supposed to go and represent you and talk on behalf of the class or the swimming team, or in this situation. The coach didn't care to speak with them. They brought in somebody who told them what to believe, and then if you disagree with them, if you have a problem, if you try to fight against them, you need to go to psychology. You need treatment. You need injections. This is the scary world that we live in. We're not allowed to have, colleges used to be places of debate. Colleges and really in general, America was built on debate. The best ideas go forward. People are able to find and hear about information and figure out what they believe because everybody's debating. And then we're able to come together and have, somewhat more, we're going to have more common beliefs because everybody's talking with each other. Yeah, there are going to be divisions, and some divisions will become, be strengthened, and some people, just might not want to deal with each other. But if we have debates and discussions, we have a common core of people. Again, these types of people love to talk about the community or the communita or society. They don't want you to be able to debate or discuss them or with them or prove them wrong. Or again, they're using social media. They're using all these tools available to them. They're using CBS and CNN to push these messages and agenda. But if you use social media, if these women were to go onto Twitter and make a fuss about this, they would certainly be thrown under the bus. They would be, canceled. They'd be kicked out of the team. And again, with how our laws are going, not only would they be recommended, psychological treatment, they'd be kicked out of the college if they did not accept that psychological treatment. And with how our laws and how our country is going, there are people who would try to force it, even if they were forced out of the college, and they don't give you, reparations, or, if you do decide to ever quit a college, or if you're ever kicked out of a college, you don't get that money back. You don't get those, you're not allowed to transition those credits to another college, and you're essentially blacklisted. You lose all of your money and all of your credits. So essentially they're saying that we will destroy your future, not only by, college-wise, but in the future, we're going to, essentially report you to all these corporations and all these businesses, and they have all these measures of control. And you don't think that the FBI is involved in all this? The organization that in the CIA who is watching every single thing you say and do, and has, you know, essentially profiles and informations. When these types of companies want to hire somebody, you really don't understand if they are a corporation or a big business, if they're Coca-Cola or, you know, any of these types of companies. They can pull up 100 pages on you. They know everything about you, and they have all kinds of measures. And today, with our this political type of climate, they have measures to see, you know, how green you are, if you're a quote unquote good person, regarding, you know, green and all these talking points, how you reacted to the coup, how you respect to quote unquote authority, how you react to quote unquote transgenderism and LGBTQ and feminism and all these types of things. And to them, those are the most important things. It's not about how well you perform, how intelligent you are, how much good you do for the community or society, how hard you work, how kind you are, how decent you are. It's about these talking points. These are the most important things in society to them, again. And if you don't obey, then you're worthless. But let's continue. Let's continue, my friends.
If you are a female swimmer on the team and you're like, this doesn't seem fair, you'll just be referred to a psychologist. They'll help you out. You're the one with the problem. You're the one that needs help. That is exactly what gaslighting is. So when these girls were uncomfortable in the locker room because there's penis, excuse me, you need to see a psychologist. When they're like, hey, something isn't fair, you need to see a psychologist. So these girls were silenced and gaslit.
And I bring this up as well, and I wanted to make another point, is because I wonder if Lia has ever been to a psychologist where we have real ways to evaluate, not only, I mean, we have the scientific ways to actually look at, again, the average estrogen levels of women and then the average testosterone levels as a measure. But I highly doubt that Lia Thomas and many of these transgender type people, we have good and decent and accurate measures of figuring out if somebody's mind is also in a female or a male type of mind. But again, these are the same people who, you know, get to say that there's no differences between men and women whenever it conveniently, you know, serves their purposes. But Lia, you know, we don't know. I don't know. Does this person even think like a man, or does this person think like a woman? I don't know. But if you, again, you know, this is worse than gaslighting. Gaslighting is, you know, you express, would, for example, in this situation would be like, I feel concerned, but for my own safety. Gaslighting would be something like, why aren't you concerned for the safety of Lia, because, you know, that person is under threat by you because of the things you could say or the things you could possibly do, because, you know, quote unquote, you're more likely to be dangerous. This is worse than gaslighting. This is a direct attack. And it's also I hope that y'all understand that our psychology has been completely taken over. If you've been, you know, if you look at psychology, I tried to look into it. I would like to learn more about psychology, but there's not a lot that's given to the public that's even somewhat accurate. Again, there are a couple people like Fauci who are considered the quote-unquote leaders or professionals, and you're supposed to trust them or formulate your beliefs on them, and they're very loose or not very well explained, just like, you know, with Karl Marx, with Marxism. And it's become extremely radical in the last 20 or 30 years. Psychology no longer exists, and it's now a weapon of the modern, you know, extreme modernist left type people. You know, if you believe in capitalism, you might need to see a psychologist. If you believe in freedom, that people should have pew-pews, you might need to see a psychologist. If you believe that there are differences between men and women, you might need to see a psychologist. If you're uncomfortable with people taking advantage of you, taxes, pushing these social type things upon you and your kids. If you don't like that your kids are being, told to do promiscuous activities as young as 6 and 7 and 8 and sometimes younger. If you don't like that your taxes are being used to, do these surgeries on little children and all these types of things, you might need to see a psychologist. You see, these are tools that they have at their disposal to control you. Hope that we're clear about that. Because they do not want to negotiate. They aren't going to come to the middle. They are not going to capitulate. They're not going to negotiate. They're not going to work with you. You either obey them or we throw you out. That's what we got going on today in our society. And these are the same people who, say that they're fighting for basic rights and basic freedoms and that, just decency and humanity and love and tolerance and all this. These people have no love, tolerance, or compassion for other people. They have no tolerance. And there's other videos I'll be making in regards to that topic as well, but let's continue.
Not only are they dealing with something that is incredibly unfair on their team, not only do they have to be in the locker room with this person, which, is that legal to tell a girl that holy cow. If they're upset about it, they're the ones with the problem and they're the ones that need help and they need to sit down and shut up and take it. Oh my gosh. Wasn't it just 3 years ago? It was all about misogyny and the patriarchy and believe all women, #MeToo, time's up. And now, excuse me, I don't feel comfortable in the locker room. Let me get the psychologist. It's like a horror film. My mother...
And then she gives a personal story about how her mother would, defend and fight and, yell at somebody if they were to do something like this. Again, these types of things, you might not experience these types of things if you live outside of a big major city like San Francisco or San Diego or Dallas, Texas, and New York and, Chicago and, states like Illinois and maybe even Michigan. You might not experience or see much of this type of stuff going on, but this is the kind of stuff that forms and is put on public. This is the kind of stuff that is on your news. This is the kind of things that are talked about and presented to your kids at public schools and in colleges. This is becoming the new social norm, and it's they don't care about you. And if you try to debate them or discuss something with them, if you bring up actual facts, they're not even going to discuss it with you. They're simply going to tell you to go to their leftist modern psychologist, and they're going to try to program you to, believe a certain way. And you don't think that these people are willing, to, drug you or drug your kids as well to change their minds? And, the things that mess with our food. If you don't know, Bill Gates has bought up billions of dollars of farmland. With all this, this goes deeper than genetically modified food. It goes much deeper than that. You don't think that they're willing, to, do even worse because they want to depopulate the world. Or dramatically reduce the population. These people are willing to go to these extremes. And again, it's very strange that these are the types of people who say that they will not discuss anything with you. See a psychologist. We're not going to discuss something with you. See a psychologist. You see, they now try to, or largely do, control what is science and what is psychologically normal. And these women are threatened that they will lose their jobs and careers. They will lose, that they can't perform as a swimmer in competitions in the future. They'll lose everything that they've ever worked for. They won't even be able to get a regular job. I said the same thing about Kavanaugh or even Trump. If those people, were brought, like pushed out of society like they want them to, they would be too much of a liability. They couldn't even work at your local McDonald's because there'd be people threatening them, and doing violence, and you know, committing acts of violence against the business. It would make their business possibly look bad because of the publicity and the influence. These people won't stop. These people are not going to stop. They think that there needs to be more of people like Lia. Again, I'm going to end this story here. She says a little bit more, but I think that I think we've heard the most important things of what she has to say. Somebody who has not fully transitioned, somebody who has not had their testosterone levels reduced to the range, the what's normal for an average woman. And this person has not I'll say it again, has not transitioned. They still have that thing in the middle of their legs. They have not gone under, they have not had the surgery. And that, again, that is one reason that this person's testosterone is way higher than an average woman. So if you know the science, if you speak the science, if you speak the facts, these types of people now will not even discuss, quote unquote, the science. You either believe the science, you see, they don't believe in any of these things. They don't actually believe in the quote unquote science. Everything is a tool and it's a weapon for them to use whenever it's convenient for them. Whenever it's effective, they'll use it. But they never hold themselves to any types of standards, any types of rules, any types of limitations, any types of consequences. What about the science now? Where is the science? They don't care about the science. They don't give a damn about the science. And again, if you feel unfair or if you're mistreated as a transgender person, I'm sorry. Maybe one day we will be able to change things on a biological level. Why don't you make competitions, with other transgender people? Or why don't you just go and swim in free-for-all sports? Why do you have to go into invade, women's sports? Why do you have to do that? And this is potentially going to lead in the future, where they say there's no differences between men and women. There are scientists who are already working and people who are already working trying to figure out how to change your food, how to change your water, and how to change society so that men are actually as, I don't know if they would make them have more estrogen or not, but they certainly would work to make men have less testosterone and to be more similar to women. Smaller, shorter, weaker. These people want this type of stuff. This is ultimately the solution that these types of people are going to come to. This is the type of solution that they think would be quote unquote acceptable. And that's what worries me going forward. And these women. Can you imagine these women, the position they're put in? And again, I want to make it very clear. I'll say it again. This is not just one example. This is more than just one instance. This is what is happening in society at large. LinkedIn has openly said that if you do not support quote-unquote green initiatives or quote-unquote green tech with global warming, that they have measures to essentially report you or make you look bad to potential employers so that you won't get a job. Like if you don't support enough or don't do enough, or if you quote-unquote have opposed one way or another, these types of measures. And it's the same way with the COOF and all these things. You don't think that LinkedIn, and I mentioned them because they are the biggest website right now where people they get hired, and these organizations have tons of power and influence. All of these businesses get co-opted and they get taken over. And that's one reason I say that if you do have decent beliefs and want to live in a decent society, that you need to start excluding people, or or putting, or even if you do hire them, you need to put some restrictions upon them. You can't allow an extreme modernist type person who's doesn't care about doing your job, who doesn't care about your business, who doesn't care about society really. Their number one goal is to push, one of these agendas. And it's the same thing with feminism. All these businesses and corporations allow themselves to be completely taken over. You allow them to make all these fake departments, departments about how the company is being inclusive enough or not, where they pull strings and they make demands. They control your advertising and your hiring practices and all these efforts and quote unquote charity events and all this publicity, and the quality of your product is secondary. In the past, for example, there would be companies and they'd be producing 10 different new flavors of like soda, for example, like an experimental drinks like Mountain Dew or Monster and stuff like that. They'd be producing like 10 different flavors, and sometimes it happens from time to time, like with chips, like with Lay's. Like Lay's would be producing 10 different experimental flavors. They'd be figuring out what works so they can in the future maybe sell different specialty chip flavors, seasonally, or maybe it became so popular that they would start making it regularly, that it would be on the shelf. These companies, these modern leftist type people, they don't care about producing a new chip flavor or a new flavor of soda drink or a new product that could actually improve your health or an invention or a technology. To them, the number one thing in society is molding it and changing it so that there's less men, there's less testosterone, and in regards to this, are these people even willing to target women? Are they going to try to force men and women to become the same? Are we going to try to biologically even change women to become more like men? Are they going to force both of the genders to come together and make us both almost inseparable in how we look and act and in our physicology? This is scary, dangerous stuff. This goes much deeper than what you're thinking about and the average person is thinking about. And again, you might think that I have gone too far with this. No. There's scientists already talking about these types of things. You don't think that these secret labs in Ukraine, not only were they making, things that could be used as weapons, you don't think that scientists are doing these kinds of research? I mean, we proved that they were willing to do research on dogs and things like this, and they allowed flies with different experiments to eat them alive. To eat them alive. You don't think that these people, think your kid is an object to mold and to use through child care, whatever ways they can manipulate your children through daycares. We're starting to expose daycares. These types of people are raising your little kids in daycares. They went to daycare to target your children and to make these changes. It's not about making a little bit of money. It's not about helping children to become happy or decent and get through their day and give them a juice box and give them animal crackers. It's about changing society, changing your kids, and even fighting against you as a parent because you're quote-unquote problematic. You send your son or daughter to a daycare and they believe that they're a boy or they believe that they're a girl. That's a problem. That's a problem to them. They're literally forcing little boys to wear dresses and acting like it's normal and that it's acceptable. and that you as a parent don't get to decide how your child identifies, or you don't get to tell them that they are a boy or are a girl. Society gets to do that, and they get to do that. So they get to confuse or manipulate your children to think that they are transgender or no gender or a different gender, or they just, even if they weren't doing this, it's really unhealthy. Young little girls in the past would have baby dolls and be raised around other little children, and they would be, have that expectation and that desire to have children themselves, and to nurture and to protect and to serve would be encouraged, even as little daughters. They would, a lot of the times, they would have to raise or help their little brother or their little sister and things like that. We don't have that as a part of society anymore. You ship them off to daycare. That, older brother or an older sister, they're not taking care or having that responsibility put upon them, and they're being told to be, take care of their brothers and sisters and their family and their friends. This goes much deeper than what people are talking about. This goes much, much deeper. If we want to talk about psychology, so you're not being told or encouraged or have a lifestyle where you're, protecting and nurturing and even teaching, your little brothers and sisters and things as a child. But so that's been removed. And on the other hand, your children are told to be experimental and to have these beliefs, and that it's normal to, either transition or have different pronouns or change your gender whenever you want to. It's normal to take certain drugs and injections and pills and things to change your physicology. It's normal for you to want to go get surgery or be a drag queen. It's normal for taxpayers to pay for all this. It's normal for parents to pay for all this. They tried to make a TV show recently where, about upcoming drag queen little boys and their parents going through this. All a parent has to say is, I'm not going to pay for this. You don't have access to my credit card. You can't pay for these things, so you can do these types of things. But do you see, why do they even have free time to do these types of things? Again, these types of people who live in these big cities, they're exposed to all these types of things. They don't have to work to do, normal activities, to take care of like a farm. They don't have, they're not exposed to anything that's normal. And and things are a lot more social. Again, I bring this up because a lot of people in the quote unquote country don't understand a lot of these city type people, and the city type people most certainly don't care or ever don't think to care to think about, other people. Again, people who are raised in more rural areas see the responsibility. They see things, they will have to experience dangers and threats and snakes and violence, and there's much more exposure, and things are brought down to much more of a basic level. These people in cities, they have, they don't have to experience any of those things. Again, most of these people have never lifted a tool. They've never worked. They've never actually physically done much of anything in their entire lives. In their entire lives, they've never done much of anything. And again, these little boys and these people in general, that you can go through daycare, public school, and high school, and in college, and you can never ever have had any life experience. You haven't worked a job. You could be 25 and get out of college. You've never had a job. You've never lifted a tool. You've never been responsible for anything. You've never self-criticized yourself. You've been told that you're perfect. You've been given participation trophies. And that's why we have all these entitled, selfish people. They've never had to work. They've never had to fail. They've never made a mistake. They've never been criticized. They've never had an actual debate with anybody. They've never been challenged. No, some people have never disagreed with them. I went to college and I disagreed with people, and nobody had ever disagreed with them. Nobody had ever told them no in their entire lives. I want that to sink in, because that's what's going on. These people have never been told no in their entire lives. Lia Thompson is not being told no. She's not being told disagreed with. She's not being challenged. She's not being debated, even by the women in the swimming team. This person is being promoted and encouraged by news, by organizations. In these cities, there are organized, well-funded LGBTQ and trans organizations, and all these people get tons of taxpayer and government funding and scholarships and all these types of things. They have tons of money thrown at them, and they're well organized. Lia is not going to ever have to experience any of this, unless she has a Twitter profile, and if she even cares to try to debate or talk to people on Twitter. But this person can report you and most certainly get you kicked off of Twitter. So, what is my message here as a man? You know, again, this is a man's channel talking about helping you be successful and happy and be smart. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here. I'm not going to speak too much longer, but you as a man need to be speaking out. Again, I talk about the MGTOW people and how they're stepping away from all of this. Maybe we could get more women to come to our side and understand and be reasonable. And there's many men who still would like marriages and would still like relationships and a family. Maybe we could find more of those like-minded and decent people and not completely give up on society, even though in general men are extremely hated, outcasted, manipulated, and abused, yes. But maybe if men still try to, you know, they would still be demonized, but maybe if we made an outreach and tried to help these women who feel like they are mistreated, you know, put out an open hand to these types of women who are being mistreated, you know, and I, you know, again, I've talked about these types of things because people freak out and say, you know, socialism isn't here and this has nothing to do with socialism. All this stuff is undermining our lives and our identities and our freedoms and our country. All this makes us weaker. You know, China has outlawed this stuff, and even Russia to some degree, and they know what makes America what is making America weak and these types of things. But as YouTube and these organizations push for men to become drag queens and put on makeup and be effeminate and, you know, wear really tight jeans and all of this. And it's also a part of our music. It's everything. I've talked about that before as well, that much of our music, many men don't even sound like they don't even sound like men. They don't have masculine voices. And I noticed that even as a kid when my parents played like 80s music, and again, I was born in the 90s. You know, you have to go back to like the 70s or the 60s or maybe older than that to even find music in America where men's actually sounded like men. Men, I hope that you do speak up, you know, against these types of things. You speak about the scientific facts. You reach out to women who do feel like, you know, they're being pushed out of society, because women now are being pushed out. You know, women were useful. They, you know, the Russians said it best, the quote unquote useful idiots. Now women are, you know, are being disposed of. Women have served their purpose. Now we got to go further. We got to weaken people's, you know, identities and their biologies and distract society even more. What? Imagine if we were focused, you know, you as a man were focused on your career. You were focused on making money. You were focused on succeeding. You were focused on, you know, helping the world, producing a product or a service. You know, imagine if people were focused on a real economy. Instead, we have to worry and debate, and we're being outcasted because of something, you know, like this, transgenderism. And then people wonder why our economy struggles, and these people who don't understand or don't even care about inflation, they act like it's fake or it doesn't exist, or that it'll magically fix itself if they give out more loans. I mean, they don't even bother to explain how inflation even exists. There's people at high levels in our own government who actually don't even understand how inflation is created, and don't care to explain what inflation even is to the public. Many people in America don't even understand what inflation is anymore. That's how uneducated we are. You as a man need to be a pillar of education. I think that's one way that we could possibly fight out against these types of things. Yeah, you'll be hated and you'll be outcasted. But if you have so much wisdom that people can see that wisdom and those facts and that information and your intelligence as well, maybe even some of your style, maybe a little bit of your personality too, at least you tried, and it will influence people. That's what ultimately they're trying to stop. They try to stop you from thinking and also from speaking. Again, they are silenced. They have threatened these women to be silent. And if you're silent, then they just have control. And that's one reason some of the criticisms I have for MGTOW. If you stay silent, yeah, you might have some peace one way or another, but you're still going to be taxed. They will still hunt you down, and they will still put regulations upon you. And, you know, and it'll just become worse and worse for men. I think if you are going to go out, at least you need to be give yourself a fighting chance and try to influence and help other people, because there's people out here in this world who have never heard anything decent. They've never heard any facts. They've never heard any information, any science. They've never heard any wisdom. Their parents didn't teach anything to them. Their teachers, in fact, have taught them bad ideas and bad principles. They've never had any leadership. Again, I made my channel to help the men who were outcasted, who didn't have father figures as well. I invite you to my channel, because many of you didn't have any fathers in the household. There's not men in society who are father figures. The best kids have as father figures are superheroes, and they really don't teach you much of anything or give you much of any wisdom. And they're attacking and getting rid of, you know, men in superheroes. You know, the She-Thors and the She-Hulks and all this stuff is coming as well, because you can't even have any. You can't, and all these things. And Wonder Woman is more important than Superman and all of this. You can't even have, you know, any male role models, anything that's strong and masculine. And they just destroyed Batman, if you haven't paid attention. They just destroyed Batman. You can't even have those types of role models in fantasy and even in entertainment. So pretty soon, if you don't raise your voice as a man, and you know, not only will there'll be no father figures, or you know, essentially male influence and male wisdom and these types of things, reason, you know, debates, reason, these types of things, they'll be almost non-existent. And women also it seems they'll also be non-existent as well. So I encourage you that you do speak out. You do find like-minded people, and you do find friends and people who, you know, do more than just post memes. Again, memes are fun, memes are good, but I think that you need to, you know, have some friends, you know, you need to have some friends that are like-minded. I'll wrap this up. Hope that you've learned and heard about something new, something that is real news. Again, my channel is much more informative than CNN. Much better than any of these organizations, like the MSNBC and the BBC and all of these organizations. Much better. And please give me a like, comment, subscribe, and all that. Because, you know, I served you and I helped you here today. And I'll see you soon, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow. Again, I'm going to start doing lives more regularly, so please stay tuned around, noon, 12 noon. I'm going to start trying to do those in the future, so stay tuned for that. So I'll see you soon. Peace out, and bye.